multiple save files. This game has multiple save files. Ubisoft finally figured out that we need multiple save files. Open world games are a complicated beast. They offer hours upon hours of gameplay, yet if said gameplay cannot be maintained fun enough, they can wear out their welcome and eventually devolve into a checklist of chores. On top of needing a gameplay loop that keeps the hour-to-hour gameplay fun, it's also needed that we, as players, find ways to utilize the sandbox at its full potential. This was one of the biggest stigmas plaguing Ubisoft since the turn of the 8th generation of consoles. The yearly releases of Assassin's Creed in the 7th generation, and constant iteration on basic mechanics like fast traveling and superfluous XP systems, created the perception that Ubisoft is bad and their games are lazy cash grabs. To the point, even a new IP like Watch Dogs got stifled by downgrades and Ubisoft's abusive higher-ups' stubborn refusal to get out of their comfort zone. Well, I can't help but feel someone must have locked up those abusive managers during the development of Far Cry 5, Watch Dogs 2, and Assassin's Creed Origins, because they are the trifecta of games that finally managed to break off the Ubisoft formula. I already talked about Far Cry 5 at length, so Watch Dogs 2 is next in our list. I personally enjoyed the first Watch Dogs more than it probably had any right to be. Despite having a fair set of shortcomings, it was like playing GTA and Deus Ex's janky cousin. Well, again, despite popular opinion insisting on the contrary, I ended up loving Watch Dogs 2, and all of it because of the reasons many people probably chose to pass up on it. It all clicked almost immediately when I booted up the first mission. We play as Marcus, a young adult sneaking into a heavily guarded facility in order to reach the main server and wipe off his information from CTOS, an operating system that keeps track of you and every single one of your moves. As I sneak around armed with nothing but CQC and a stun gun that might as well be a tranquilizer gun, it started to dawn on me. I am playing a Metal Gear-ish game. No, seriously. I know this is a dumb comparison and I know fellow Metal Gear fans will burn me at the stake for this, but please hear me out. Watch Dogs 2 has non-lethal options for its stealth. You can make noise with nearby electronics to distract and even take down guards with them, and if you get spotted and they lose sight of you, you enter an evasion phase, and when you get discovered, all the guards have an exclamation mark. And the most Metal Gear-ish element that serves as the cherry on top of this? Every single mission is open-ended. Well, almost all of them. I am serious though. There's so many different complex ways to complete these levels that I even forget this is a Ubisoft game. And it's not just that. San Francisco may have the most fun open-world sandbox I have enjoyed in years. I will dare say it's the biggest contrast compared to games like Cyberpunk or even other Ubisoft games. But in order to get my point across better, let's go step by step. As I said earlier, the story is about Marcus, a young hacker wiping out his own CTOS profile from the main Bloom servers, because this is his initiation into DedSec. Essentially, they are this game's version of Anonymous, except this fictional hacker group has a 3D printer and lots of magical hacker powers. The core of the conflict here is that Marcus discovered that Bloom Corporation has an algorithm in place that preemptively discriminates people based on their own personal information. It goes so far that you can even get preemptively arrested or be rendered unemployable if CTOS determines something is off about you, and thus, him and his newly found friend group of hipster hacker nerds taking upon themselves to ruin this algorithm and expose the injustices of corporate America for the world to see. And I personally love this premise. Much like Far Cry 5, this is not yet another story of revenge, but rather one of justice. Your entire escapades into the streets of San Francisco have a purpose, but because this is DedSec, not everything you do will be done 100% right on the ethical side. That is where the gameplay loop comes in. Remember how I said the levels are all open-ended? I mean it literally. The game has 3 gameplay styles listed under its tutorials: Stealth, Trickster, and Aggressor. You can either play traditionally and sneak past guards and avoid detection, you can use your drones and hackables for some good old-fashioned shenanigans, or if you just don't feel like doing any hacking at all, you can equip a gun and just blast everyone in the face. And the possibilities here are endless. San Francisco and the surrounding cities are all varied in the environments and placement of hackables. Early on, you can unlock a flying drone that you can use to scout the place and know the exact placement of your objectives. And from there on, you can plan how you move and how you reach your objective. And you can even improvise between the 3 gameplay styles in case one ends up failing. So just to give you a few examples, if you want to, you can alternate between the 2 drones to keep guards distracted and remotely reach your objective. Hack, grab the thing you need, and then enjoy your victory without even setting foot in enemy territory. Or, if you need to be present in order to manually hack or reach a specific story place, you can distract guards with dank memes that will either make them laugh or make them angry. Either way, they'll be too busy looking at their phones to notice you or your drone sneaking past them, and you will have ghosted them without anybody being the wiser about your infiltration. Or if you get the right upgrades, you can weaponize your drones to throw stun/explosive sticky bombs and use them to stun or kill the guards. Or just use say explosive to destroy your targets again without having to physically be there. Or if you need to clear the way to physically reach an objective, you can weaponize the environment. While the game has the typical fuse boxers and gas canisters, you can now also hack cars to make them move at your will, so you can turn them into projectiles to kill the guards and put a hole in their patrols. Or if you got discovered or don't have the patience to sneak past them, you can just grab any ground of your preference and gun down everybody. And the further upgrades you get in the game, your possibilities of fun get even more possibilities of their own. The world becomes your playground. It makes a straight-up strategy game of what is otherwise a wacky GTA clone. So, if I am to compare this game to an existing franchise, it goes like this. If Watch Dogs 1 is GTA mixed with Human Revolution, then Watch Dogs 2 is Saints Row mixed with Metal Gear. Though after a full playthrough and exploring the limits of my own creativity with its mechanics, it leans a lot harder into the Metal Gear style of open gameplay. Or, since this is Ubisoft, I guess the more fair comparison would be if Splinter Cell or Ghost Recon were set in an urban environment, and instead of Sam Fisher or the Ghost Team, you get wacky hipsters. But that's the base gameplay. How about the open world? Well, the open world here honestly is one of the best Ubisoft has ever made. Mainly because it breaks away from the usual conventions Ubisoft stubbornly refused to let go of. Rather than needing to unlock specific fast travel points or even needing to climb towers to reveal part of the map, you have the entire world map revealed from the very start, and you can use your main safe house or the countless businesses around the town to fast travel. The towers are still there somewhat, but this time they're an evolution of what the first Watch Dogs did. Because this is a city, your towers are instead the rooftops and several high-rise areas. Climbing them is entirely optional, and rather than rewarding you with waypoints to filler activities or new fast travel points, they either carry money, cosmetic unlockables, or upgrade points. Thanks to the existence of the drones, you can even get those rewards without needing to climb them yourself. But you also are better off maxing out your upgrades before you do more, as some obstacles require you to have set upgrades for easier movement. What I love about this is that it makes exploring the world a lot more fun. Rather than spam you with icons on your map from the get-go, they instead show up as you approach them. So it feels a lot more organic and compelling to go looking for them, and getting those collectibles is even better because the maps will show you a checkmark for places you already got collectibles from. It's a kind of convenience that will make every open world game a lot more fun to explore through. Another thing that makes the exploring fun is finding the secrets. On top of what I already mentioned, this game also has unique cars you can unlock by finding them in the world. I didn't even know they existed, and stumbling upon the first one and getting it unlocked for me to spawn whenever felt even more satisfying. Now, I know the way I am describing things make it sound like I'm just driving fast traveling between areas with nothing fun in between, but that is not the case. Just hanging out in any populated area brings in its own set of shenanigans. The people of San Francisco and neighboring cities are actually living their own lives. They are hanging out, they talk to each other, and thanks to the emotion system they react to each other, and in turn Marcus can react to them. You can diffuse angry situations, or you can taunt people to make them mad at you instead. Or if you feel like being a vigilante of your own, you can hack their phones and make them wanted criminals for police to arrest. And that kind of freedom to mess around with the civilians leads to its own little bits of fun. Before I elaborate further on the open world activities, I think we should talk about the XP system. Ubisoft always had a thing for adding a progression system where you earn points that level you up and unlock upgrades for your character. In the case of this game, the XP points are implemented in-universe as followers. Unlike in previous games, the only way you gain followers is by completing missions and activities. The in-universe explanation being that people are following DedSec via their downloadable app, are lending the processing power of their phones and computers to get your upgrades, which kinda makes sense. I like this kind of progression system because it's not tied to one unique gameplay style. You will not gain points for hacking, killing, or performing takedowns, so no action will net you more rewards than the others. This eliminates an unintentional restriction we impose upon ourselves as gamers when we try to prioritize the most efficient way to play, even if it sometimes comes at the cost of fun. It also turns the sillier, more social elements of the game into a rewarding mechanic. Much like the previous game, the city here is full of touristic landmarks that you can take selfies with to gain likes and followers. I like this because it gives you a reason to get a bit of quiet time in between the action of the hacking and the shooting, and it's tied in universe too, as your allies will comment on your selfies and you even get unlockables from it. And you can take selfies everywhere and whenever you feel like it, so you can have a nice memento of your own little misadventures. But if you don't feel like doing the touristing, you can instead be a cab driver. Buried in your phone is a little app that lets you pick up customers and let you do small little racers with their own stipulations and challenges, so you can strive for that 5-star rating and get some more followers and money that way. The best part? It's a tribute to a long-gone driving franchise, Driver San Francisco. And the fun part is that the majority of these taxi fares are little stories of their own. It honestly is refreshing to see an open world game where the money is not the emphasis, and neither is building up a criminal empire. I mean, yeah, the game allows you to commit Grand Theft Auto, and if you really feel like it, you can just start blasting civilians so you get into a huge conflict with the police. But for me, that has never been a priority for the open world. And the criticism level at this game's story being juxtaposed with players who choose to just blast people in their faces is precisely why I do not play that way. I understand there's people out there who feel Watch Dogs will be a lot better if you play it as multiple characters, or if they got rid of guns altogether. I do not agree with that. Yeah, the guns exist, but going back to my Metal Gear comparison, the guns exist more for the sake of you having the means to defend yourself in case you get discovered by heavily armed guards. Yeah, story-wise, it doesn't make too much sense for these characters to leave so many corpses in their wake, but their story is one that doesn't take itself too seriously, so in turn, we as audience shouldn't really take it too seriously either. And that of course applies to most of gaming. Because once you stop taking it too seriously and learn to just sit back and have some fun, gaming becomes a lot more enjoyable. I know this doesn't apply to everyone, and there will forever be people turned off by certain games if the writing or the characters are not to their liking, and I can respect that. Not everyone are going to like everything, and everyone liking everything equally will honestly make for a rather boring existence. Back on topic. One thing I enjoy and seriously appreciate from this game is that once again, rather than spam you with vision markers all over the map, you get instead a mission selector. The game has about 15 story operations, but the trick here is that each operation is divided into its own subset of missions. Think of them as mini chapters for a bigger story arc. This makes everything feel a lot less cluttered. Some of the side missions don't even show up until either your friends called you or you stumble upon them as you explore the world. A good number of them are mostly privacy invasions, but they are really good privacy invasions. You can directly interact with what you are spying on, and it adds yet another layer to the whole hack the world theme of the franchise. You can even swat a swatter. And much like the rest of the open world, getting to those privacy invasions is a small little challenge by itself, because at times you will have to solve a 3D puzzle in order to reach the terminal you need, and this is a mechanic that takes place in the story missions as well. Thinking in 3 dimensions is a great expansion from how puzzles used to be done. Because now, it's not just you scrolling through each connecting node, you have to physically move around the room or an entire building in order to solve it. And while these puzzles are not exactly survival horror levels of good, they do make you think enough to make them satisfying. There is one other set of activities you can complete for this open world, and that is the races. And it's amazing how much variety they put in them. If you want to, you can go boat racing, you can do time trials on a bike, you can rush around the city in a car for the fastest time, you can take your drone for a spin in a little flying challenge, and you can even have a little go-kart race and compete against others. And all of them can either be made on your own or online against other players. But what else is there to do once you're done with everything? Well, there is online operations. They are their own sets of stealth/combat challenges where you need to kill someone, download something, rescue someone, or destroy something. But rather than being mere copy-pastes of the main missions, they got their own difficulty levels, and the harder they are, the more obstacles you have to go through if you want to even open the doors to your objective. They are balanced so you play them with more people in co-op, and surprisingly, there are still people playing in the online here. But if you don't feel like doing that, you can just jump in and play them for yourself. And they are quite a fun challenge. The best part is they are randomly generated, so you get a constant source of new missions to do if you want to keep having fun with the main mechanics once the credits roll and you finish everything else the game has to offer. It is a wealth of gameplay, and it is one I wish more developers apply to their big open world games and not fall into the hole of repetitiveness Ubisoft made itself infamous for. But if you don't feel like going offline and you don't want to mess around an open world with no more instances for stealth of combat, you can replay previous missions. Post-launch, the developers updated the game so most of the old missions can be replayed, and this can be done even before you beat the game itself. It's not 100% perfect, but it makes for an awesome form of New Game Plus, because you can go back to early game missions and have all your upgrades and weapons with you, so you can explore the things you missed out on the first time around without having to start the game all over again. And since the gaming industry went nearly 2 generations where everything has been stuck to a single save file, this is a much more welcome change. It adds legitimate replayability to the game without making it a chore to go through everything else before you get to that one mission you enjoyed a lot. Now, I've been praising the hell out of this game through this entire video, so I guess there should be at least something negative for me to say about it. It's not much, but the main story has one particular problem in its writing. Because one cast member has a certain significance to a string of missions, and because apparently the developers never accounted on whether or not you will do the main missions first and the side content later, said character never appears outside of that string of missions. And that is rather jarring. The one mistake they made here was play it safe with this particular character, because his string of missions come and go so fast, and you spend so much more time with the rest of the cast, it creates a nasty disconnect, and not even all the campiness can save a neglected character from feeling rather superfluous. The only other problem I could have would be in the races, but I will attribute it more to me needing to hone my skills. This game's driving is such an improvement over the previous title that it feels bizarre to see the races feel rather janky. Crashing into environments against your own will, losing control of your vehicle, and worse yet, having to do all that while you are pressed for time and for leaving your other competitors behind, it made some of those very frustrating to go through. But I guess it's also why you only need to do one race for it to be counted for the 100% completion. So I guess I am grateful that problem is tied to the races and time trials, because otherwise, the driving in this game is so beautiful. It even makes the inevitable car crashes all the more fun. The police are still relentless in fighting you, but unlike the previous game, you now have the means to defend yourself. No, you still cannot do drive-bys, still not sure why that is not a thing in a game like this, but instead, they compensate for it with the hacking. Remember how I said earlier you can hack cars to make them move on their own? You can actually apply it to other cars that are being driven by others. So in order to lose the cops, you can develop the multitasking skill to rush through the main road, look back, and hack your pursuers into swerving out of your way. That is one of the biggest changes they did to the hacking too. Because now they expanded your hacking arsenal, you now have to quickly open the hacking menu and choose the thing you can do to your hacked victim. It's no longer a QTE, even though that is still a thing in certain places, but it's something that adds more option and more depth to the hacking. To all of this, add the customization of your cars, your guns, your drones, and even Marcus himself, and Watch Dogs 2 is one of the most complete packages in gaming right now. I would love to go deeper into the things that make the dumb cheese of these cyber hipsters fill me with so much joy, but that will be entering spoiler territory. If I cannot recommend this game for the story, then I will recommend it for the gameplay. Any game that lets me do my own storytelling through my own gameplay will immediately win a special place in my heart. This is why I am more than happy to give Watch Dogs 2 a nearly perfect 9 out of 10. It's amazing how much more games can improve once developers don't get shackled by old tired formulas and instead they get to have some genuine fun. I know a lot of people swore this game off because of the cyber hipster cast, or because of the dank memes, or because they wanted a more serious deconstruction of living in a police state where you no longer have privacy since everything tracks you and collects your data. And I understand that. But for me, not every game has to be an overly deep think piece about the state of the world. Not every game has to make you feel bad for killing people, or question why you enjoy video games, or make you reflect on the moral implications of choosing lethal versus not lethal weapons to kill human enemies. Not every game has to be The Last of Us, Spec Ops, or the many genre reconstructors out there. Sometimes, a game just needs to be that. A fun game. I'm not saying everything has to be mindless fun, but rather I believe there's plenty of spare room for a bit of everything. It's okay to have certain tastes, but sometimes in order to have more fun and more enjoyment out of your interactive media, all you need to do is sit back, relax, and expand your horizon.